Hello, my name is Zoe Routh. I'm a leadership expert and I specialize in the people stuff. You know, that stuff that keeps you up late at night when you're fretting about why Frank and Karen just can't get along. Why is it that they're stuck in their silos? Why is it that they're ripping each other's heads off? That's the kind of stuff that I tease out in the work that I do with leaders and their teams. One of the things I want to share with you today is out of my latest book, People Stuff: Beyond Personality Problems, an Advanced Handbook for Leadership. And it's about this idea that's really critical to your development as an effective leader. And it's this: perspective is power. How we see ourselves, how we see others, and how we see the bigger picture will make or break your long-term leadership success. So one of the key elements of that is learning how to actually develop your perspective. And in People Stuff, I go through in the first chapter explaining exactly how to do that. The key thing is to think about your perspective. Are you looking far, deep, and wide enough? And chances are you're not. Typically, when leaders do strategy, say, for example, they consider a 1 to 3 year time frame. Even the 5-year strategic plan feels nowadays like a long way into the future. And yet, if we are to be successful as leaders, we need to expand our horizons. And the first element of developing perspective is to consider multiple generations behind us and multiple generations in front of us. We want to be thinking about the ripple effect of what's come before and what will come after our decision making. Now, sometimes that's really hard to stretch our brain material in those directions. And yet, what it does, it brings a sense of responsibility and a sense of dedication to our work as leaders. So our work becomes less transactional and more transformational. So that's one element, is to expand our time horizon and to really stretch how we are showing up and the impact that we are having in the world. Now, we also want to go deep in our perspective, which means that we need to get beyond the surface level issues that we're seeing, whether it's a people dynamic thing or a strategy thing. What we need to do is to dive deep underneath the surface. So those little surface issues actually have contributing factors to them. There are patterns at play that create those problems. And underneath the patterns, there are systems in the organization and the organization's context which create the patterns, which create the visible problems. And underneath all of that, we have the values, the meta language that are at play in the organization, the humans that come together in order to achieve their outcomes. So if we are going to affect long-term change, we actually need to look through all those deep layers. And this is the work of Richard Hames in the 5 literacies of global leadership that I'm talking to here, is looking below the surface at the complexity. And when we start to be able to see those kind of layered causal factors in express challenges in the workplace, now we have an opportunity to make changes at a deeper level that will have a long-term positive effect, instead of just a little Band-Aid solution. Okay, and the third area of perspective is, and I love this one, is to look like an astronaut, to see the world as an astronaut does. And Rusty Schweickart, who was the first astronaut to do an extravehicular spacewalk, basically a spacewalk, on his space capsule, describes his experience as he first stepped out onto that ledge on his spaceship, looking down onto the Earth, where there was nothing between him and the Earth except a vast blackness, and his spacesuit, of course. And he had this moment of deep connection with all things. And it was this huge sense of oneness that overwhelmed him as he looked at this tiny blue dot, which is our planet, which had such a small layer of atmosphere that actually ensures all life on the planet. And he had this realization that we are all connected. And so many astronauts report similar experiences, the sense of grandiose awe and wonder that changed how they showed up on the Earth when they returned to it. So there was no longer us and them, there was only us. And our sense of usness needs to expand considerably. So we need to get beyond us versus them. Whatever binary concepts you have, we need to start as leaders. If we're going to be effective as peacemakers, as transformational leaders, we need to expand our sense of usness. so that we have an inclusion of the greatest number of humans as possible, as well as all living sentient things on the planet. Now, that may seem very lofty when day to day you're struggling with a spreadsheet or Frank and Karen are bickering again. And yet, when we show up with that kind of perspective, we are centered, we are focused, we are inspiring because we show up with the qualities of wisdom and compassion. Wisdom is the best of our mind, and compassion is the best of our heart.